Hello, Guardians. Last week we lost someone who can only be described as iconic. Lance Reddick, who played Commander Zavala, and an active and avid fan of Destiny and the Destiny community, sadly passed away on March 17th, 2023. We want to pass our admiration and love not only to him as a dedicated actor, but to him as a magnificent and pure human being who radiated with kindness and shone like a beacon of light against hatred. Our thoughts are with his wife, Stephanie, his family, and his friends. Donations can be made to mumcares.org in Baltimore, his hometown. Rest in peace, Lance. Please join us in a moment of silence. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 55 of Podcasts vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. This week we are spending some time as Mara's Queensguard, as we cover the season of Defiance weaponry. We also share some of our Strand builds, as we've been playing since the launch of Lightfall. Let's kick us off with some thank yous. Impetus.
Hello Court, hello Saint. Yes, we do have a few people to shout out this week. I want to give a quick shout out to some folks that reached out to me actually in regards to something I said in last week's episode, talking about Golden Tricorn and its effectiveness on Strand weapons. I had Harrisark and Clancy reach out to me advocating for that perk, especially in the use of the grapple melee effect, as well as shooting tangles to proc the ×2 Golden Tricorn effect. So thank you for bringing that up, guys. That was a great point there. I do think Golden Tricorn does have a place on Strand weapons, definitely more so than on stasis weapons. So good points all around. Thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to notify me of that. Do want to also welcome two new patrons. We have Oracle563 and George McBay. Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for your support. And speaking of support, I do also want to shout out our sponsors, folks who keep the Massive Breakdowns Network up and running. Those people are Binary Wolf, Black Hammer Tech, Bryce Aroni, Asking Monk, Deacon, Moonlight, Shazzle, This Moment, and Zen SoCal. Thank you so much for all of your love. We greatly appreciate it. As a reminder, you can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. So please don't hesitate to reach out. If you've got questions or ideas, we are all happy to talk Destiny. And speaking of podcast reviews, we use Chartable to aggregate those. This may take some time for non-US listeners' reviews to appear. Alternatively, you can also send your review to any of our socials. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to the show, discussing it in the Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to a members-only channel in Discord that will include behind-the-scenes info and input on the future of the show, plus access to our legendary annual merch drop. And you can also check out our sibling podcast that dives into the PvP sandbox, which is the Destiny Massive Breakdown show with Ill Physics and Lego LaFlash. All right, Saint, hope you're doing well. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, it's good to be back with the whole crew this week. We're going to kick things off with some notes, especially on the PvE side for the recent Hotfix 7.0.0.5, the TWAB from the 16th. We'll hit on some Strand builds, and then we will jump into all of the Season of Defiance weapon breakdowns. Before we jump into our last week in Destiny, we do have just a couple things we want to mention. Court, I know that you have been busy working on a bunch of stuff in the server. What can you tell us about our build section in the Massive Breakdown server?
Oh, really? The shout out goes to Creamy Cody. Cody, he's the master who went in and just kind of rejigged and did a mini overhaul to the forums for build crafting. Proper announcement on the Discord, of course. But with Lightfall wiping the slate clean for builds and theory crafting, we've decided just to start afresh with this form. Never really made much sense to keep pre-Lightfall builds in there. So moving forward, this channel can be used to find our builds. We will have a new, or we do have a new DMB featured tag. I know that was one of the complaints before. So not a lot of folks could really find our build. It wasn't well filterable and searchable. So this will hopefully help out. So that tag is now live, only for us three, for Lego and Ill Physics, along with Merc and Kit if they want to show off any builds that they've been working on in the live game, and Otto as well, and any other builds that we feel like we want to highlight. So it's just a little special tag for ourselves. Of course, we, us hosts, the PvE hosts, we are currently in process of migrating and creating new post-Lightfall builds, so please bear with us. As Saint mentioned there, we are going to share one of our kind of Strand builds for each subclass this week. And yeah, big shout out to Kirby Cody for the revamp and also setting up the template, if you so desire, for Guardians to use for your builds. Imtis, you mentioned something last week in regards to the brand new Waveframe Heavy Grenade Launcher.
Yes, this is the dimensional hypotrochoid is what Cord is referring to. So I broke that weapon down in last week's episode when we were talking about the Neomuna weapons, and I was incorrect in a few things, namely the blast radius and the mag size. So I'll start with blast radius here. For waveframes, and this is now I've learned this past week, this is also true for the heavy GL, not just the special GL waveframes. Blast radius only affects the projectile, not the actual wave itself. So what I will now say is focus on the velocity and handling stats more so than the blast radius when you're looking at your barrels. So recommend quick launch and high velocity rounds. High velocity rounds was my recommendation last time, but still stick with that, as implosion rounds does hurt your blast radius and also give you a boost to stability, which I don't think is needed. So quick launch, high velocity rounds are my barrel and mag recommendations. On the magazine side in D2 Foundry, which is what I was looking at, it shows up with a magazine of 1. That is not the case. Magazines are a bit finicky when it comes to our weapon breakdown websites that we use. So it's not D2 Foundry's fault. That's just an API issue that we kind of have to deal with. So this does not hold 1 in the magazine, as I said last week. It actually holds 5 in the magazine. In terms of the perks and how we kind of work around that, my previous recommendation was Envious Assassin. I still think that's an excellent perk choice for column 3, but knowing that we do have more than 1 in the mag, I also think Field Prep probably deserves a little bit more attention. You can get larger reserves there, and I think that'll be excellent. Chain Reaction, of course, is still going to be the recommendation for column 4. So those are my adjustments. Thank you to the folks that reached out to correct me on that. I should have been looking in-game, not just on D2 Foundry, so sorry about that, but let's talk about what we did in Destiny 2 last week here. I can start things off. I've been doing a lot of weapon crafting. I've got all but 1 Defiant weapon crafted. I've also got Imperial Decree crafted. Just did that last night. Finished the Legendary campaign on Titan, so I'm currently filling out the Strand fragments for that character, just playing through a bit of the post-campaign stuff there. Beyond that, doing a few more raid runs. Still didn't get to craft any weapons. I was unfortunately plagued by the bug where I couldn't access a guaranteed red border from the chest that comes at the end of the raid. So I'm 4 out of 5 on Rufus's Fury, which is killing me because I had really hoped that would be my 5th one from the red border chest, but I'll just have to wait for next week and see if I get lucky. Saint, what have you been up to?
You know, I jumped into Trials this weekend for the first time in a long time because of that damned SMG is just too hot, man. It was the Immortal this weekend, and we did end up going flawless. You know, big shout out to my teammates Oblivion and Shadow Shock, some guys from my raid teaming clan that I've played with a lot over the years. I did get a pretty good threadling build. I'm just tested it out just a little bit. Feels good. Definitely looking forward to putting that to more use as I kind of hone in on a Warlock threadling focus build. I think that thing is going to be a great tool. I also got lucky on my raid exotic. I got it on my 4th looted clear. I'm really loving the whole triumph system where you complete various challenges, encounter challenges, subclass stuff, and you can slightly increase, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but your drop chances on the exotic. This is something we've seen in dungeons for a little bit. I think this started with like Heart Shadow, and now it's made its way into a raid, which is awesome to see. I know that like the subclass challenges help with this, the encounter challenges, and then there's also like a dramatic increase I believe if you do a flawless version of the raid, which is awesome to see that if you're somebody that has historically had a bad time just grinding your head against the RNG for raid exotics, well, now you can go do a couple targeted runs, take on some challenges, and up your drop chances, which is awesome to see. Court, how about you, man?
Yeah, so you guys didn't actually see it, but Saint directly looked at me when he mentioned that, because I took 58 loot runs, looted clears to get Vex Mythoclast, and the dungeon runs.
Okay.
Oh. Nope. The dungeon runs with the Duality and Spire obviously had those triumphs, and only took 4 or 5, which is great. As much as I love raiding and dungeoneering, it's not it after 20 runs, I'm going to be honest. But having said that, I've done about half of the triumphs for the raid, and on my 5th looted clear, I did get the new raid shotgun conditional finality drop. I've been having a real blast with it, all puns intended. I'm not a big shotgun fan in PvE. I don't think any of us here really kind of hype up shotguns. It's not really it's not in a good place, just normal shotguns. But with this being an exotic, it obviously has a lot more bells and whistles. So I'm loving the whole freeze, or the instant freeze and instant ignition. Very much love those subclass effects. So really, like, big shout out to the weapons team and all those that were involved in the shotgun, because it will definitely be settling in some of my future builds, especially when it comes to solar. You know, I did try a little bit of this with my Titan Sunbreaker last night. Very, very kind of bare bones testing, but just being able to spread ignition and then the scorch fragment when you spread that, and just, you know, perpetual ignition sources. A lot of fun. Obviously, I wasn't here last week, so I didn't manage to get my thoughts about Root of Nightmares. Very fun raid, I'll say very quickly, and the art of the raid is some of the best ever. I still maintain the scale and the vibe and the art of Kingsfall is still up there. However, I think Root of Nightmares has kind of knocked it off the top for me. All the recent raids have looked excellent, just really great. But Root of Nightmares is just something else. The art direction, the art team have just went completely bonkers with this raid, and I love it. Like, that is, like, I know there's been a lot of kind of mixed signals and messages when it comes to this particular raid in terms of difficulty, but when it comes to art, it just looks amazing. Completely amazing. So I do want to shout out my day one raid team. We did get the day, I think it was hour 13 clear. So shout out to Phaeton, Casper, Noah, Grind, T-Dot, and Bondo. There's more than, there's 6 names there. So we did have a few alternates just to drop in and drop out. Finally, I did get my commemoration crafted. We spoke about that many episodes ago when Deepstone Crypt had its refreshed perk pool. I've finally managed to get my I got the 2 red boxes to drop on, last week was the Deepstone Crypt featured raid, so I managed to get that to drop at the end of the final boss, and yeah, been completely loving it. Been working on ranking this monster up, especially this season. This is definitely the season to work on your void anything, but specifically machine guns. Lots of fun. All those orbs of power and the void shenanigans popping off. Lots of fun. All right, let's kick us off with some TWAB and update highlights. I'll just kind of really kick us off with the hotfix. So we did get an increased drop rate for the exotic armor in Legend and Master Lot sectors when playing solo. This was hotfix 7.005, by the way. I think people are still trying to extrapolate how much that increase has went up to. I haven't played many Legends and Master Law sectors because I managed to get all the new exotics that came out this season before this hotfix went up. But have you guys seen any kind of increase in the drop rate?
The number that I have seen for Master Law sectors seems to be somewhere between 30 and 40% drop chance. Is what other people have been posting from doing testing. I haven't personally tested this stuff. I can't think of a worse thing to do in Destiny than test drop rates in Law sectors, but that's the number I've seen. I have no idea what Legend is. Again, due to the difficulty changes, I think a lot of folks are probably not quite at a level where we can get consistent farming testing done. So, but that's the number I've seen for Master Law sectors. About 30 to 40% is where it's at now as a chance for an exotic drop at the end.
Yeah, I have not run a ton. There's just so much other stuff going on in the game right now.
Yep.
I'm like, man, dude, I could be doing encounter challenges to pump up my exotic shotgun drop rate. I'm not doing Law sectors, okay? I got one good roll on the new Titan boots, and I'm out. And that was enough to get my challenges done for like the Guardian ranks. I was like, cool. Did about 5 clears, and we're done. And that's about all I got to say for Law sectors right now. And I mean, well, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you not want your Diamond Lance exotic? The helmet?
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Diamond Lances, real cool. Love that ability. Am I going to dedicate my exotic to Diamond Lances? Yeah, no, man, I don't think so. Maybe it deserves a little bit more time, but especially compared to the Advanced Elite like boots. Well, I'll talk about in just a second of my Strand build. It's just like not even close in the amount of value it offers in like in-game PvE, even like middling PvE, right? But yeah, I don't know. I know that the difficulty increase in Lost sectors is something that's been a really hot topic since pretty much Lightfall dropped. So it is nice to see that the rewards are pumped up, and the material rewards themselves were already upped a little bit at the beginning of the expansion. So it does feel nice to see that the drop rates are going up along with the difficulty. And kind of like you said, we'll see exactly where that lands, but so far so good. We also got some fixes, on armor.
Yep. So this is actually pretty close to my science brain because I've been working on this kind of comprehensive breakdown behind the scenes. Yeah, sure, I'm no longer updating my spreadsheets, but I'm still part of the science, the Destiny science world. But yeah, so there was some issues with the artifact mods not properly working with the anti-champion capabilities. So they've kind of did a quick pass on some of those things, including so the medieval champion last artifact mod, it was Glaive and Sword, that would sometimes turn off if you had quite a lot of decaying mods, is what they mentioned anyway. And yeah, I haven't seen any issues so far. Let's say that's still a little bit buggy. And also for my fellow hunters, they did fix an issue where volatile rounds granted by Falcon's Hauberk exotic chests were not providing void weapons with anti-barrier capabilities. Not that we kind of need that right at the moment. Falcons is taking a bit of a back seat this season because volatile flow exists and pretty easy to sustain for all classes, not just hunters. So yeah, I've noticed, I think all of those kind of issues with champion counters not working have mostly been eliminated, but there are still a few things I've noticed with, especially with Ensnaring Slam, which is the Hunter Strand dive, it does suspend combatants and unstoppable champions, but there is some inconsistencies with it actually stunning unstoppable champions. So yeah, I'm going to need to send a little bug report about that one. But yeah, it's good that they did a nice pass of that, 'cause, I don't think we've really spoke about the quality of life update with champion mods being kind of really split up and, you know, spread around all the subclass verbs. It's a great change here. One of the best quality of life updates that they've introduced to the game. And it's great that they're still, you know, being pretty proactive when it comes to any breakages in the system or any errors or issues. So it's good to see. All right, who wants to talk about the Winterbite exotic glaive?
I can do that one. So yes, they did fix an issue where the Winterbite exotic glaive was doing more damage than intended to targets. So I have to ask a clarification question here. My understanding was that they fixed the melee, but the projectile still seems to be doing quite a lot of damage. Am I wrong about that? I have played around with it since the patch went out.
I think you're correct. I think there's some misunderstanding with people saying it's been fixed and then people saying, yeah, they fixed one part of it. From the videos I've seen is when the orb, the Freezy orb, hits a boss, it will chunk their health significantly.
Okay.
And I don't think that's intended.
Yeah.
Because we've seen in the past where if you do a ton of damage, like this huge amount of burst of damage, the health bar hasn't got enough time to catch up until a few seconds later, and then you just see this massive chunk being taken out. So I think it's similar kind of issues with that.
So it was the projectile. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I used it and had the projectile hit a boss. So, okay. That must be what they were tweaking then. Titans, the bonus to glaive melee damage granted by exotic Sithoceps gauntlets has been reduced against both combatants and enemy guardians. This has been a huge nerf. There has been some testing done here. It appears that certain powered melees do more damage than glaive melee damage when Sithoceps is equipped. So, seems to be like a bit of an overcorrection. Feels very, very severe. I know there's been a lot of posts on social media about this. We'll see how this fares going forward. But yes, don't use Sithoceps with glaives anymore in PvE is kind of where we're at right now. It is not worth the effort. The synergy is there, but you're not getting a lot of benefits out of it anymore. So that is unfortunate for the Titans. The last thing on the weapon side, they did fix an issue where a Grand Overture's blinding effect applied to other sources of splash damage. This was a very, very fun bug, but crazy. So glad to see that has been reined in, and that is just it for the weapons. We do have quite a few ability tweaks here. Saint, do you want to talk about what's been going on with Strand?
Yeah, I was going to say with the Titan exotics and the glaives, two things. Number one, I know that I think that this may have been like originally slightly blown out of proportion, but it's still very bad. I know that Mossy was doing some testing on glaive interactions. I'm not sure what his final findings were, but yeah, it's bad. And it's sad to see. And the last thing I'll say on that note is that there's also Wormgod is still out there. Wormgod's Caress is still a thing. With Burning Fists is still interesting. We'll see how that plays out over time. But yeah, go ahead, Court.
Yeah, I think people need to remember that Sithoceps does do other things. It's one of those few exotics where it also works for your super. I think, yeah. In regards to like Mossy's findings, so yeah, it's still. He did put up a big post about it very recently. His general kind of too long didn't read findings were, yes, it is still a nerf against bosses. There was an original kind of comparison post, but they tested it on a mini boss where the differential between a powered melee and a glaive melee is very wide. It makes it look a lot worse than it actually is, but it's still a nerf for bosses as well. I think it's, as just mentioned, it has been kind of blown out of proportion.
Gotcha.
But maybe, I think still, maybe just a smidge of overcorrection is my thoughts as well as impetus.
Yeah, kind of sad, And it was ridiculous the amount of damage that you could put out with some of the glaives, especially with like close to melee and some stuff like that on some of the bosses. You could melt some of the bosses. Like, I get why they wanted to nerf it, but it is sad to see. Abilities. I'm just going to run through these ability changes real quick. A lot of Strand-focused stuff, pretty much, just kind of cleaning up on some stuff from release. Increase the internal cooldown of the Thread of Ascent fragment from 2 seconds to 4 seconds. So this whole thing where people were just grappling to the ground and then just like reloading their rocket launchers has kind of been nerfed down a little bit. And then fixed an issue where after a player would grapple to a thrown tangle, the Berserker and Into the Fray aspect would not activate on the tangle detonations. That was fixed. They also fixed an issue where the suspending detonation from Brood Reaver's Mindspun Invocation aspect was not properly stunning unstoppable champions that would be affected by that. There was another issue where the Thread of Generation fragment would stop functioning after your Silk Strike super deactivation. With either your Shackle and Threadling Grenade is equipped. So that was also fixed, which is great to see. And then finally, they fixed an issue that was kind of a crossover between Radiance and Strand, where Radiant was not increasing the damage on Strand weapons. That's also been fixed, which is really great to see. Just a couple of highlights from the TWAB. Guardian rank commendation scores for your Guardian ranks, I should say, have been way reduced. I won't go through every individual number here, but at one point, rank 11 would require a score of 6,000, which is just obscenely high, and that has been reduced down to 1,800 with all the other ranks from 7 to 11 kind of falling in line, starting with around 500 now for rank 7, and then going up to 1,800 at rank 11, which feels way more in line with the other requirements that you're going to have, like reaching these Guardian ranks. We're also reaching a point where we're having to wait on like Grandmasters and some other stuff like that to come out later in the season. So I don't think you can get past rank 9 right now, can you, for Guardian ranks?
So I'm at rank 8, which you can get beyond rank 8 into rank 9, but I think rank 9 is where you start getting you must complete a GM. So yeah, rank 9 is where we're currently at, or where you can feasibly be at until GMs launch in a few weeks. And
I want to say there'll be some similar requirements, like kind of on the way up to rank 11. So as long as you make it up to about 1,500, 1,800 commendation score by the time the GMs come out, you'll be set for the rest of your ranks. I'll just hit on a couple of known issues real quick to run out the TWAB. There's a bunch of stuff in there about like Trials and Iron Banner, but we're just not really going to cover all that stuff. Known issues that have not been fixed yet. Reservoir Burst Explosion can sometimes fail to interact with Subsistence on a kill. There's some fusions and stuff where this shows up. The Grav Lift on Neomuna is indeed tied to your frame rate, which can cause players at higher frame rates to die or just simply not land when you're traveling up along that Typhon Imperator, which feels really bad to experience. It's really funny to watch. So if you're having trouble with this, just cap your frame rate off to like 60 and you should be fine until you get through those Grav lifts. Some heavy weapon archetypes are not benefiting from the third reserve mod when you're stacking some of these things up, so that we'll see some buffs. I'm not exactly sure what all is included in this, but some of them are just capping off at 2 reserve mods and the third one's not having an effect, which is not intended. There should always be a slight, even if it is diminishing return, increase whenever you're stacking up those reserve mods. The Dimensional Hypertrochoid that we've been talking about at the beginning of this episode can roll with a range masterwork, or you can put a range masterwork on that, which does not do anything. Do not put a ranged masterwork on your Waveframe GL, okay? It's just not going to do anything for you, and that will be taken off. And then finally, there were the bug where Restoration can revert to a lower timer instead of increasing when you reapply the source of the buff. So they know about the bug there, and I think that some people have been seeing that with like a Fire Sprites and some things like that. Instead of your Restoration being refreshed, it's actually getting knocked down a little bit, which feels bad, and I'm sure will hopefully be addressed soon. Okay, anything to add on our TWAB, Guardian ranks, anything like that, guys, before we jump into Strand?
They're also aware of the red border chest not dropping a guaranteed red border if you got a red border weapon from that chest the previous week, which is the case for me. So wait for that to, I mean, you can still do the chest, of course, if you're doing a raid run next week, but just be aware of the fact that there might not be any loot that pops out at the very end. So
yeah, good shout out, Impetus. Good shout out. All right, Court, why don't you kick us off with kind of your initial Hunter Strand build, and then we'll each hit on one for our classes. What are you doing in your Hunter, man? How's it going?
It's going really well. A lot of fun here. I'm actually really excited to talk about Strand and for us to talk about builds again, because it's been like, about
it's been a minute.
15, 20 episodes. It has been a minute since we've talked about builds. I know I've had several comments and questions about when are you guys going to talk about builds again? It's like, well, we know that they're revamping the system, so there's no point making a build at the moment because, So, yeah, I have been absolutely loving Strand Hunter. There's just a really great synergy here when it comes to Assassin's Cowl, which I'll talk about. So yeah, Strand. Of course, our super is Silk Strike, which, it's kind of jack of all trades here, where it's got some really great burst damage, some great sustained damage, and AoE damage for a super. I feel like Bungie might need to pick one here, because I don't want a super that just gets completely tanked in the future. But yeah, Silk Strike is fantastic. Obviously, you do get that sort of infinite grapples and dives as well when you're in that super. For our grenades, for Hunters, we have the grapple grenade. Of course, that is the absolute core for this build. For melee, we've only got Thready Spike. It's kind of, it's there. We aren't really necessarily building into Thready Spike, but can synergize with some of the mods that I'll mention a little bit later. For class ability, I went for Gambler's Dodge. I kind of always go for Gamblers just so I can get my melee back in time. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to be dodging a lot. I'm going to be diving. For exotic armor, as I mentioned, it's Assassin's Cowl. Just a quick note here, Assassin's Cowl you cannot get from Lost Sectors. Don't bother. You have to obtain it from Shadowkeep's story completion first. Then it will start showing up in Lost Sectors. So if you've been wondering why you haven't been able to get Assassin's Cowl, that's why. But if you do not have Shadowkeep, or to be honest, I would definitely recommend getting Shadowkeep just for Assassin's Cowl. If it's on promotion, if it's on an offer or anything like that in the future, do that. Or if you've not bothered to do Shadowkeep yet, do it right now. Assassin's Cowl is just one of those really great synergistic exotic armor, not just for Strand, but for any type of Hunter build. Alternatively, you can go for the Aeon Gauntlets with Sect of Insight. So obviously we don't have Lucent Finisher this season. This is your next best option when it comes to kind of guaranteed heavy brick spawns. Obviously we do have Ammo Finders and Scouts now in the helmet slot, but if you want guaranteed drops, then Aeon Gauntlets. And it does play into the whole finisher build here. Assassin's Cowl is all about finishers on top of powered melees. Exotic weapons, entirely up to you. I'm a big fan of Quicksilver Storm. It's still currently doing less damage to red bar enemies, so it's not really a great choice at the moment, but it will in the future. Once you get that catalyst that makes it a Strand weapon, but it does close out any Strand synergies and kind of interactions once you do have that catalyst. Otherwise, it's a free pick, whatever exotic weapon, anything that you want to tie into your Siphon mods. So for aspects, we've got Widow's Silk, which is obviously the whole kind of giving you an extra grenade, not necessarily just for grapple, but you can. I think you can get an additional grade for threadling and for shackle, but I've not tried that out. I'm going to need to check that actually, because what I'm reading here says it's only for grapple. Interesting. Anyway, we're using grapple grenade here anyway. Ensnaring Slam is your dive action. When you perform a dive, you will require your class ability to do so. And of course, you'll get that suspend on that land, which affects quite a sizable radius, I will add. And of course, it does have the unstoppable synergy. Can be a bit wonky, as I mentioned at the start of this episode. It's just not proccing consistently, but it should proc, hopefully, consistently in the future. For our threads, we have continuity, which is Strand debuff effects last longer. You do get that plus 10 strength. Generation, which is your dealing damage, generates grenade energy, which really closes out the for getting your 2 grapples up really fast. That is a minus 10 discipline. And thread of warding, which picking up an orb of power grants woven mail. You'll be spawning plenty of orbs of power, so there's no issue here. You do get that minus 10 resilience as well. For your 4th pick, it's free pick, finality. If you're doing the whole, finishing a lot of things, finality is giving you the spawning a threadling, and it's based on the combatant rank. So if it's a mini boss or a champion, you'll spawn 3 threadlings, and if it's just like a normal thrall, you'll just get the 1. Mind as well, you could pick if you want to. That closes out the class ability energy gain. Killing enemies affected by suspension, doesn't matter if it's from your suspension or if it's, say, impetus or saint have caused them to be suspended. It just any combatant that's suspended will give you back your class ability energy, so you can then do more suspending. I did have this on a little bit, but then I decided to go down the route of utility finisher and just picked another thread. Alternatively, you could also go for propagation, which is powered melee, which includes grapple melee, grants Strand weapons unravel rounds, which gives you that anti-barrier synergy, and the unravel verb effects, which is still a little bit of testing going on for unraveling. There's a lot of kind of almost like a jolt effect happening with unravel, and it does kind of spread around. So I can't give you too many details here, but in terms of actual synergy with champions, you've got that for anti-barrier. Some other options, but those are kind of my optional picks there. For mods in the helm slot, we've got siphon mods, matching your preferred weapons. You can equip hands-on, or you can do ashes to assets, or you can go for your ammo finders and scouts. For arms, you've got heavy-handed and firepower. For chest, free picks, I went for charged up ×2. Or 2 mods to give more room for armor charge. Otherwise, resist mods, legs, free picks. I went for stacks and stacks for additional armor charge, plus font of agility to round out mobility up to 100. So I had mine at 70. So I'll have that plus 30, which is where you get you get plus 30 from 1 stack of font of agility mod. Otherwise, you can go for surge mods and just play into kind of matching your preferred weapons, like the siphon mods. And then for class ability or class piece of armor, we've got utility finisher, time dilation for longer armor charge decay, and reaper. And for specific weapons, again, free picks, whatever you want. Matching with your siphon mods, you can really pick and choose here. Remember, everything's not dictated by your we don't have affinities attached to our armors anymore, so you can put in kinetic, you can put in solar, and you can put in void if you want to do that. I know this season we've got like combination of mods. We've got Strand and void, so for this reason, for this season we could go a void MG and a Strand auto rifle, and you've got a nice synergy there, but it's entirely up to you. I've been really enjoying anything void, especially this season, to churn out those orbs of power and volatile rounds. But yeah, mix and match if you want. So the Strand Circular Logic machine gun, which I know these guys were talking about last week, can also excel here. Again, just to close out the various Strand subclass interactions. And I know that can spawn threadlings if you've got that perk active. So the big kind of gameplay loops here, we've got grapple into grapple melee, killing the combatant, triggers the following. So you get 2 orbs of power that spawn. That's from heavy-handed and firepower. You'll be maybe wondering what's going on here. That's because, maybe not intended, but at this present, the grapple melee, when you kill a combatant, counts for both heavy-handed and firepower. So you'll get 2 orbs of power spawn. That is insane, considering the amount of things that can spawn orbs of power. You'll also get the health bump and the invisibility trigger from Assassin's Cowl. And when you pick up orbs of power while unseen to grab stacks of armor charge, and woven mail gets you to utilize the font mods or the following triggers. So you can suspend dive a group of ads, finisher on the weakest enemy, and then that kind of triggers into the following. If you have finality, you can get that threadling to spawn. You get the health bump and invisibility trigger from Assassin's Cowl. Reminder that the finisher does have a higher potency versus the grapple melee or just any powered melee. Class ability returned as utility finisher consumes stacks of armor charge. Now you do need 3, minimum of 3, but the more armor charge stacks you have, where that's 3, base for this effect to work is at 3, but if you have 4, 5, or 6, then you're pretty much guaranteed to get your class ability back. And then grapple melee to spawn more orbs to restart armor charge, and then rinse and repeat. And that's what I've been doing this in the last couple of weeks. Lots of fun, lots of orbs. Just a kind of secondary gameplay loop here. I mentioned Thready Spike. It can be used for a longer range, especially in higher difficulties. If you want to bring down an enemy's health, throw out your rope dart just to grant that invis trigger, and do that kind of hit and run tactic. Silt Strike, as I've mentioned, is a supremely strong single target and AoE super. Plus you have the unlimited grapples and dives. For fragments here, continuity extends the suspend duration. Generation guarantees always having at least 1 grapple up at any given time. And of course, when you're using Reaper, you get that +1 orb of power when using a weapon if you need a really kind of quick top up to your armor charge. But you can't utilize grapple melee, so a lot of fun. I've put this build up on the Discord server. You can read the full kind of gameplay loops and the vibe when it comes to this, because it's. I've got a feeling some of these interactions will get knocked down a smidge in the future. I don't know about you guys. Have you witnessed any of this for the hunters?
Yeah, I've been playing with you, and you're putting up triple digits on the orbs generated screen, is what I've been noticing.
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
Plus, there's no cooldown. I think this is something we talked about a little bit, but the fact that a lot of these methods of orb generation, like a couple of the fragments have cooldown, but a lot of these have no cooldown, which is just ridiculous, especially when you mix in like your siphon mods and your shatter orbs into the mix. It's easy to generate 135 orbs in a single activity, which is obscene. It's just the amount of time that it gives you for your like damage boosts and stat mods is nuts.
I think especially, we were kind of talking about this really quickly off the podcast before we started the podcast today, and then Impetus and I were talking about it over the weekend as well, where, I think the amount of orbs that are being generated here is bonkers. And when you see something like, all of the subclass fragments, whether that's Arc, Solar, Void, whatever, they all have cooldowns. So if you do X thing and you spawn an orb of power, bang, 10-second cooldown. There's no deviation. That is pretty. It's the same across all subclasses here. There's no kind of weird thing that's going on here. But then it's just like, well, I can go on my Hunter Strand class here, put on heavy-handed and firepower, grapple melee, boof, there's 2 orbs. And then I've got Reaper, that's +1. You can make 3 orbs constantly. Mm-hmm. It is really just bonkers here. But yeah, anyway, yes, the Strand Hunter build is on the Discord server. You want to have a little look. I've got a dim link up as well. And have fun until it get nerfed. Saint, you've been talking about a very interesting Titan build here. I know you shared some screenshots on Twitter and Discord recently as well. What can you say about
Yeah, speaking of things that may get nerfed, let me tell you. Woven Mail, all right? Woven Mail is an ability that is in the game, and it is obscenely strong. And I think that first of all, I'll say that's like the whole focus of this build is like Woven Mail uptime, right? And that's kind of what the Titan was geared towards a little bit with its like class ability and its initial aspects. And so kind of my thought was, okay, how can I take this and just absolutely max out my Woven Mail uptime? Woven Mail is a 60% damage reduction in PvE. And unlike the Void Overshield, so like Void Overshield is a great ability. Void Overshield has like 45 or 50 health points, right? And it also gives an effective damage reduction, which is awesome, for any kind of in-game content. A Repulsor Race is a great pairing with that. And there's some other Void Titan stuff that I'll talk about a little later on in this season. But for now, let's just focus on our Woven Mail and how we're going to keep it up, right? So the kind of key piece of this build is the new Abeyant Leap exotic boots. And I think that, when they initially showed these off in the trailer, the big focus was like, oh, instead of your Dringer's Slash aspect generates one little like suspending, lash that reaches out, it generates 3 with the boots, and they can travel a little bit further. Okay, now that's really nice for being able to just like throw down your barricade and you suspend everything in the room. But the other thing that these boots do is they say that when you suspend a target, you gain Woven Mail. All right. Okay. All right. This is we got something to cook with here now. All right. We've got a kind of a piece to build on. So let's take that. We're gonna add on Shackle Grenade, right? Which if you hit your initial target, it can spread to a couple around it. You can suspend a few things, and it's also just like an instant stun on unstops, which is really nice for kind of higher tier content. And I've been kind of putting this through the paces. We've been doing some Master Nightfalls and stuff like that, and some Legend stuff, which is where this has really started to shine, this build. So we get Shackle Grenade instead of Grapple, which I know hurts to like give up the Grapple, which is so much damn fun, but it is so worth it for the ability to be able to throw that grenade and again trigger that same effect that your boots are giving you. We don't really have much option in our super and melee, right? It's just kind of our Frenzy Blade melee and our Blade Fury super, and then you got Rally Barricade on your class ability. I like Rally because it's got a shorter cooldown, so I can keep my loops up. I totally get, you don't like small wall, you want to go tall wall because it has more defense, but I think that the amount of damage reduction that you're getting from your Woven Mail is worth it to have that like 6 second or whatever it is, 7 seconds shorter cooldown. Whenever I'm looking into the rest of my build, I got my 2 aspects into the fray and Dringer's Lash. And the fragments that I'm going to pair with those are going to be Generation and Warding, which I know Court mentioned both of these in his previous build for the Hunter. Generation, dealing damage, generates grenade energy that will hit you with a -10 discipline, but we can make up for that in some other parts of our build. And then Warding, picking up an Orb of Power, grants Woven Mail. So if our grenade and our class ability weren't enough when we're generating orbs, we're also getting Woven Mail. And then to round that out, I've been using Transmutation and Mind. Transmutation, while Woven Mail is active, weapon kills spawn tangles. Okay, that's playing perfectly in with my super high Woven Mail uptime. And then Thread of Mind is killing enemies affected by suspension, grants class ability energy. That is just like an incredible loop with the Abeyant Leap in the first place there. Finally, if you didn't want to run Mind, you could maybe run Wisdom. Precision kills and suspended targets generate an Orb of Power. I don't think I see this one as quite as valuable because there is just so much else going on that you're going to be able to generate Orbs of Power with, right? Your Siphon Mods, Shatter Orbs, all this other stuff that is going to generate orbs that I don't think Wisdom is quite as valuable as like the very direct loop that Mind has. So that's definitely why I would make that choice in the final column. This may change over the season, but I think this is like a really core start to this build. And when I'm looking to my mods to keep building on this, I am going to be running a couple Siphon mods. Void Siphon because of my energy and heavy weapon, and then either a stasis siphon or kinetic siphon, depending on which weapon I'm running in that slot. I like to use Riptide a lot, so that would definitely take stasis siphon in there. And then Powerful Friends is also a really good mod for really minimal cost. It's like a single point for the share charge, which is all really handy. Even though there's a lot of orbs, this just kind of stacks on top of that and helps you keep your teammates buffed. Your teammates can help keep you buffed up, which is great. On my arms, I'm using Heavy-Handed for my powered melee attacks generate orbs. I've also got Impact Induction. Melee damage reduces my grenade cooldown. And then I like to either use Focusing Strike or Bolstering Detonation, which are kind of interchangeable. That is either melee damage reduces class ability cooldown or grenade damage reduces class ability cooldown. Now, I actually wouldn't recommend your grenades firepower. Grenades are generating orbs of power because you're not in a lot of content where you're using these shackle grenades. You're not going to be getting the kill with the grenade off the bat there. So that's not quite as powerful or valuable as maybe Heavy-Handed is in this build. And another reason I like Heavy-Handed is because if I expose myself a little bit to use my Frenzy Blade melee attack on an ad, that is going to generate an orb. I'm going to pick that orb up, and I'm guaranteed to refresh my Woven Mail back up to 10 seconds, which is a great loop there. On my chest piece, I'm focused on being as tanky as possible, so I'm probably going to use a Concussive Dampener, Resist mod, kind of dependent on my activity, burn or oh my gosh, it's not called a burn anymore. It's called a threat. There we go. And then finally charged up for that extra stack of hold there, which is really nice. On my legs, I'm using Recuperation for that quick, just bump to my HP directly when I'm picking up an orb. Again, that pairs really nicely if I'm exposing myself a little bit to get a melee attack or something like that. And then I've got a couple weapon boost mods, usually a void weapon. I'm going to stack up 2 of those because of the way that my loadout is trending. And then finally on my class, I'm using Utility Ticksart as well as Double Bomber. And I don't, at first I was like very against using any kind of kickstart mod as well as mods that would cause decay, but the uptime on this is so high that I don't really mind it, or I don't feel like it has as much of a dramatic effect on me. Because of Void Weapon Channeling and that whole artifact mod, you could honestly take your damage boost out of your legs, or the other way you could just use like Perpetuation or something like that on your class item. Finally, for the weapons, I've been using Riptide that's overloads, Fighting Lion because of Volatile and the weapon damage it's doing right now is like kind of busted. It's definitely going to get a nerf soon because it's really not working as intended. It deals way too much damage against low tier enemies. And then finally, Retrofit Escapade. Retrofit Escapade has been popular since it came out, and I think that this build really capitalizes on it well because you suspend a champion, and now it's easier than ever to hit your 4 times the charm and target lock because they're just floating there. So just absolutely beam them with your machine gun, and they're going to get melted. If Fighting Lion does get nerfed when it should get nerfed and goes back to its original self, I'm probably going to be going to Osteo for Overload because that has a really nice interaction with Generation, and it's just a S tier weapon in general. And then Hollow Denial in my special slot with, Lead from Gold is nice, but Adaptive Munitions is like the sleeper pick on this with the way that Volatile is working right now. So if you have like Adaptive Munitions, and maybe a Repulsor Brace would be another S tier combo, because the way that Adaptive Munitions is going to allow you to ramp up that damage against a barrier champion on something like a Trace Rifle. It's like 30% per tick or 40 if you have it enhanced, and you're those individual bullets, so to say, from your Trace Rifle are ticking so fast that it will just absolutely chew through a barrier shield. And then I'm probably sticking with Retrofit and then Heavy Slide again because it just does so much damage and it's so easy to beam targets with it while they're suspended. So, yeah, get out there, throw your barricade, kill some targets, get some energy back for mind. You're picking up orbs of power, giving you Woven Mail. When that's running out, you can throw your Shackle Grenades, give you Woven Mail. You're using your melees to generate orbs of power, which are giving you Woven Mail and reducing your class ability cooldown even further, your grenade cooldown even further. And I think that you will find that giving up your Hoyle is absolutely worth it for your Abandoned Leaf boots. All right, that's all I got for Titans. Impetus, what's going on with the Warlocks?
Oh, I'm just weaving my brood over here, man. Strand has been a really fun opportunity for Warlocks. We haven't had a bunch of very aggressive playstyles open to us. I think Arc 3.0 is probably the best option that we had if you really wanted to get up in an enemy's face and do some damage prior to Strand, but Strand definitely blows Arc 3.0 out of the water in this capacity. So there's different ways to take Strand and the Broodweaver subclass for Warlocks. I've seen some people talking about Necrotic Grip, using that with our 3 charges of melee for a really potent effect. That's definitely one way to go. I'm focusing on the playstyle that Bungie's really been pushing on us, which is revolving around Threadlings, right? Both of our aspects deal with Threadlings, our super deals with Threadlings, our exotic armor that is new, that is Strand focused, deals with Threadlings. We've got a weapon perk that shows up on legendary weapons that involves Threadlings. Let's see how well this actually holds up here. So we've got our Needlestorm super. And that, of course, will spawn a host of Threadlings that seek out enemies. We are going to be using the grapple melee ability here, but we could go Threadling Grenade. As Court has mentioned, the grapple melee is just too good of a deal to pass up, especially the fact that we can generate 2 orbs of power if we have the appropriate mods on in our arm slot. I'll talk about those in a second. So that's what I've been playing around with as a starting point, but I do think the Threadling Grenade with our Mind Spun Invocation could also be potent if for whatever reason grapple melee gets tuned in the future. For our melee, we do have Arcane Needle. We've got 3 charges of those. Those will be important to the build. You'll see in a moment here. Class ability, we're on Healing Rift, which feels really nice after playing on Starfire's Empowering Rift requirement for so long. So we can have a class ability that heals us again, which is quite nice. The exotic armor that we're going to be using will be Swarmers. I'll touch on how that works in just a moment, but that's what I'm recommending for right now. For our aspects, we've got 2 of them, and as I said earlier, they are both revolving around the Threadling concept here. So, Weaver's Call, we cast our Rift to weave 3 Threadlings and deploy any Threadlings that we have perched, and then Mind Spun Invocation. This does have a function for grapple melee, which is really nice here. The grapple melee spawns 3 Threadling eggs. What's really nice about this, there's no kill requirement. You just have to actually connect to the grapple melee, which is what makes it such a potent effect here. If you do want to go down the Threadling Grenade direction here, what Mind Spun Invocation does is you will consume the Threadling Grenade and immediately generate 5 perched Threadlings, which is still going to be quite potent. That's 5 on-demand Threadlings, and again, I say on-demand because we can get our grenade back quite quickly with the kind of mods and fragments that we're going to be using here. So I really do think either one, but again, if we want to really lean into an aggressive playstyle, really getting up into enemy waves here, the grapple melee is the way to go. I mean, you're doing it in style, right? Just slingshotting yourself into... Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We'll talk about the gameplay loop in a moment, but those are the 2 aspects we're going to have here. For the fragments, we do have 4 available slots. 3 of them, in my eyes, are going to be non-negotiable, and then the 4th one is up to you. We're going to start with Evolution. This is the one that allows our Threadlings to travel further and deal damage. The additional damage, they already deal damage, but they're going to deal additional damage here. For me, the big part of Evolution is the increased travel. Threadlings do climb up vertical surfaces, and that does count for their distance. So depending on where you are, and Destiny, of course, does have a number of sloped surfaces across all of their destinations here. You want to make sure that the Threadlings can reach enemies, and if there aren't enemies around, that they have enough distance left to get back to you, because they do orbit you should they not find enemies here. So that's, for me, a huge option that is non-negotiable. I need Evolution because I need my Threadlings to actually get to where they're going, and if they don't have anywhere to go, I want them to come back to me so I can at least carry them to the next wave of enemies. So I'm starting with Evolution here. We've already talked about warding on the other 2 subclasses here. For me, getting that orb of power, we are generating it through firepower, heavy-handed, is going to be huge here, because again, this is aggressive playstyle. We're going to be putting ourselves near a lot of enemies. I'm going to want Woven Mail, especially on those higher difficulties. That's going to be absolutely essential here. I'm willing to take that -10 resilience because Woven Mail is a ridiculous damage resistance buff. So that's a perfectly fine trade-off for me. And again, non-negotiable for how I'm going to be playing this. Third one that I really, really don't think we can argue about, again, we've already talked about it on the other two subclasses, is generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. We got to get those grapples back so we can go grapple melee another wave of enemies as they're spawning in. That's non-negotiable. I love it. Again, the -10 discipline that comes with it, not going to be a problem for what we got going on in the mod situation here. For our fourth and final available fragment, different ways to go here. I think, let's start with maybe the other threadling one that we have here. That is going to be finality. You finish enemies to generate a range of threadlings depending on the type of enemy. Let's have a hypothetical situation here. You've got a crowd of enemies, a wave spawns in here. You grapple melee into one of them, get them down to finisher level. You don't kill them. You can finish them available for extra threadlings. That's definitely a way to go. I think that's perfectly fine. If you're not interested in finishing tons and tons of enemies for tons and tons of threadlings, I understand that. I do think you have some other options here. Rebirth, transmutation, and continuity are the other ones that kind of caught my eye here. So let's find those here. Rebirth, Strand, weapon final blows have a chance to create a threadling. That's going to be very nice. Again, this build works with any Strand weapon that has the hatchling perk. You can stack the effect of Rebirth with the hatchling perk for extra threadlings. So that's definitely another way to go if you're not interested in generating extra threadlings through a finisher, generate them through your weapon. So that's definitely one way to go there. I mentioned, continuity and transmutation. Transmutation, if you have woven mail, weapon final blows create a tangle. That's extra synergy with swarmers. I'll get into that after I'm done talking about the fragments. That's definitely another way to go. I think an equally valid one to go. And then continuity. Where is continuity? Suspend, unravel, and sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. This also has synergy with the Swarmer's exotic armor. So I'll talk about that now. Swarmers, these are our boots that will create threadlings when we destroy a tangle. Quite strong. Love them a lot. I wasn't quite sure which stat to focus on. I ended up putting on a discipline mod when I went to go farm for these. Worked out quite well. I did get a nice bump there. I think you could probably go resilience, recovery, or discipline for a spike if you are farming these for a legend lost sector and you're waiting to actually do that. I think any of those stats are going to be worthwhile here. Destroying a tangle spawns a threadling, and additionally, this is the one that really it caught my eye here. Your threadlings unravel targets that they damage. So that's where continuity is coming into here, getting that increase effect for the unraveling. That is going to be quite nice. And again, another reason why I'm playing this build so aggressively here is that I'm generating these threadlings. They unravel targets that they damage, that they don't kill, they damage. Another great reason here to run this in in-game content. We don't have kill requirements. It's just a hit in the case of grapple melee or just damage in the case of swarmers. So anyways, our threadlings, they hit targets, they damage them, they're unraveled now. That is a perfect opportunity for me to be really aggressive, really up against these enemies, killing them, generating more tangles, destroying these tangles, throwing these tangles at enemies, get more threadlings. Those threadlings spread out and unravel more targets. You're doing crowd control, but it's not a case of where you're just sitting back and letting the threadlings do the work, kind of the way that we had on Shadebinder with our stasis turrets. No. This is the opportunity for you to lead your little personal army of bug boys as they chase you around and destroy enemies, debuff them. It's I really, really love the direction that we're going with this, and Broodweaver's been excellent. Let's move on to the mods here. This build, for me, I actually haven't been using the armor charge system. I've mostly just been using things like Ashes to Acid, Hands-On, and Dynamo, Firepower, Heavy-Handed on my arms here. It's really, I'm using my abilities and I'm just getting a little bit of bump energy back, or I'm getting extra super energy. Not too much focus on Orbs of Power, but again, if you do want to go into Orbs of Power and really take advantage of Kickstart mods, you're more than welcome to. The one thing that I do have revolving around Orbs of Power are in my legs here. I really recommend that you have either Better Already or Recuperation to get some form of health back or health regeneration back when you pick up an Orb of Power. And then depending on what you want to focus on, whether it's your melee or your grenade energy, getting that back, you can run Innervation, Insulation, or Invigoration. Class ability can also be nice as well. I'll talk about that when we get into the gameplay loop, but those are kind of two slots on my legs that I'm looking for. One is going to be for Better Already or Recuperation, and then the other one for one of the Innervation, Insulation, or Invigoration. But again, any of those can work. It's really up to how you want to play this. On the class, it's the same thing. I've got Bomber and Outreach listed as the options here. I've been going Bomber because I just want to get that grapple back because it's so much fun. But you could also go Outreach if you want to get a melee back as well. Same thing for Ashes to Assets, Hands-On, and Dynamo in your Helm slot. Again, pick your poison. However you want to get some extra energy back towards the super, it's your choice here. On the exotic weapon front, don't have anything here that I'm playing with. Again, Quicksilver Storm is certainly an option. You get more tangles when you kill with a grenade. It's not dealing a lot of damage right now due to the bugs, so I'm kind of holding off on that. However, we do have that legendary weapon perk, Hatchling. We get to spawn Threadlings. That is a huge, huge boost to Warlocks if you want to spec into a Threadling build, which I highly recommend. So look for our Strand weapons with the Hatchling perk. We're going to be talking about a few of those today in just a moment. But we do have a number of different options here. We got a machine gun, several auto rifles, a hand cannon. There's a lot of different options here. SMGs, of course, everyone's been going after the Immortal. You have plenty of great options to spawn Threadlings on the weapon front. Don't even worry about not having an exotic weapon that can help tie into that. Save your exotic weapon for something that's dealing a ton of boss damage. You know, it's up to you. There's a lot of flexibility here on the weapon side. Okay. Last thing I'll say is the gameplay loop. How do we be aggressive with the Beastmaster build? My gameplay loop, I start with that grapple melee. I've got a crowd of enemies in front of me. I've been kind of perfecting this in the seasonal activity playlist here. A bunch of Cabal or a bunch of Taken show up in front of me. I just grapple melee myself, connect on something in there, slingshot myself forward. As soon as I get that melee contact, I'm spawning 3 Threadling grenades Threadling eggs, due to Mindspun invocation. And if I'm getting that kill, it's 2 orbs of power on contact due to that firepower heavy-handed. If I'm running that Thread of Finality and I don't get a kill, there's an enemy that's finishable, then I can just finish them right there for extra Threadlings as well if I want. The orbs of power that are spawning on a kill, if that happens, do get me Woven Mail due to warding. I then cast my Rift to spawn even more Threadlings due to Weaver's Call. That's a nice backup option if you don't get those orbs of power to spawn because you didn't kill an enemy and none of the enemies that you grappled onto are able to be finished. So you just cast your Rift right next to them right there. Additionally, if you're in higher end difficulty, you get Woven Mail. You can also just cast your Rift to get healing on top of that if you're standing near some tougher enemies. You're worried you might get beamed down. Just a nice way to kind of set yourself right in the middle there. And then after I've cast my Rift, my Threadlings are going about. They're unraveling enemies that they damage. I'm just using my ranged melee if I have any charges left, or I'm shooting enemies or shooting any tangles that have spawned to get more Threadlings to appear, and really just letting the Threadlings kind of seek out any nearby enemies, munch away at them. All the time while this is going on in the background, I'm gaining more grenade energy through the Thread of Generation, so I'm getting that grapple back. Once I get my grapple back, I'm slingshotting myself into the next group of enemies, and we are rinsing and repeating until I get my super. Maybe there's a champion that gets stunned, or especially several large waves of enemies that show up. That's when I'm busting out Needle Storm. But that is the gameplay loop, and it is a lot of fun. I'm just shooting myself around. Again, you're not really making a ton of orbs of power unless you've got certain siphons tying into your weapons if you so desire. This is more to kind of letting the Threadlings do their thing, debuffing those targets, munching away at enemies, just spawning a bunch of little green buggers doing their thing. It's really cool to have an aggressive summoner class playstyle in Destiny. I thought I'd probably have to play a more complicated MMO to get that effect again, but yeah, I've been having a ton of fun with Broodweaver. And again, we've got more aspects coming down the road. Who knows how each of our subclasses are going to change next season. So excited to see that. I think we can say pretty confidently for the Warlocks, we're not getting another Threadling based aspect since we've already got 2 here. So it's very excited to see where we take each of these subclasses, what direction, how this gets expanded out. But yeah, Warlocks, we are eating good with the green stuff right now. So very, very excited with that. You guys got anything else to add about our initial impressions of Strand, your builds, stuff that you're looking forward to, things you want to keep an eye on that you're testing while we wait for the Grandmasters as we level up?
I will say that I did double check the Hunter's Widow's Silk. It does give an extra grenade charge to the Threadling grenade and the Shackle grenade. But yeah, all 3 of these classes I've been using quite a lot. The Warlock, Bug Barrage, and just go my little pretties. It's just great. It's a very different playstyle compared to what we've had in Destiny 1 and 2. And I really hope we get more of this kind of that vibe. But also for Titans as well, I've been using Abeyant Leap a lot as well. I think Strand has came out just really good. We've talked about like the orbs. There's a lot of orbs being spawned, especially with Hunter, Assassin's Kill, heavy-handed firepower, grapple melee. But I think all three classes are in a really good shape for Strand. And you got anything there, Saint?
Yeah, this whole woven mail and like void overshield interaction, that there's no way that's gonna stick around, right? That's just like obscenely strong. You're using the Hollow Denial, right? Like I was talking about, and you pick up an orb. You've got volatile flow, you're killing barriers, you're getting overshields, you've got 60% damage resist outright. Like, it just is really brought up the tank class, right, as a whole. If you don't play a lot of like your more traditional MMOs, the only thing that this is like missing from being like the true tank is the fact that it's it would have like the opposite effect of Always on Time, where enemies are like more drawn towards you whenever you have something like Woven Mail up. But I don't think that they want to design enemies and bosses like that would have additional targeting towards a specific player when you're really tanky or anything like that. But it really does feel like a unique class in the way that it brings together kind of some of your closer range melee and some of your kind of defensive capabilities and your stunning capabilities. And I think that the concern from a lot of people at first is like, oh, it's just another punchy class, and that's just like the way the Titan goes. But man, it's really not, and it really has brought something unique to the table.
Yeah. They're all three. They're so unique, and it's really hats off to the abilities team for giving us one of the most memorable, smooth, right? None of this stuff is busted outside of Woven Mail being a little too high there. I think that's probably the craziest. Let's maybe dial that back in. But looking at the actual abilities themselves, like nowhere near the level of oppression that people were feeling when Stasis first came out. So hats off to the abilities team. So creative, so much fun to play. I have to say, I giggle every time the threadlings do their little wiggle and then jump up onto a suspended target. Like they'll kind of gather beneath a wyvern and then congregate right at the feet of the suspended enemy and then latch onto it and just devour it. And it gets a chuckle out of me every time it happens.
They're like little tiny piranhas, and they're like, all right, here we go.
Vicious. They're just vicious. Love it.
I think last thing I'll comment on is compared to Stasis. When Stasis launched, I felt like for all three classes, it was pretty bare bones. We didn't have any Stasis exotic armor. It just felt like a 25% subclass. And it's the same here. Like, we are obviously getting more fragments and aspects down the line, but it's more of a combination. There's more of a complete subclass. So while it may be 75% this time for Strand, it feels like, oh yeah, I could take this Assassin's Kill build into a GM and do really well in it. Whereas I just didn't get that vibe with Stasis when it first came out, 2 years ago now at this point. So I'm glad they've really kind of been able to ship a robust class for not only just for Hunter, for Titan and Warlock, and we got Strand exotics, weapons and armor. So like hats off to them. I know a lot of kind of commentary from the Destiny community saying that they should really ship a lot of all the content all at once, and this is a live service game, so that's not always possible. But it does feel like the Strand subclasses have had a really good shipping, and I'm looking forward to. I am actually genuinely excited for the next couple of aspects for all three subclasses.
Yes. All right, that is our initial Strand recommendations here, folks. We're going to jump into Season of the Defiance weapons, do a breakdown of those, tell you what to look for here. I'll start things off with the origin trait. These all come with one origin trait. It is the seasonal origin trait. It is called Noble Deeds. It reads, assisting allies with revives or providing a healing, empowering, or subclass buff effect grants stacks of noble deeds. That goes all the way up to 10. That is the maximum there. Kills will remove 1 stack in PvE and 2 stacks in PvP of the noble deeds. We are still trying to figure out what the actual buff itself is. What it will grant you is all weapons receive a handling and reload speed stat increase. Swords receive a charge rate increase. We're still working out on the numbers of those at the moment, but this is very much a support style origin trait, which we haven't had a ton of. Well, at least it's an origin trait that encourages you towards a more support style. So again, I've been using these, been crafting a bunch of these, leveling them up. It's been kind of interesting. It's kind of hard to track, of course, especially with something like revives. That's conditioned on things outside of your control. But the buffs that you can offer certainly favor things like Bubble Titans and Void Titans and Solar Warlocks, to say the least. So just be thinking of that in the back of your head. I don't think this is a poor origin trait by any means. I think this is can be useful in the right circumstances, but there is a good bit of setup that probably needs to go into it if you want to really take advantage of this origin trait. So Court, Saint, how did this origin trait strike you guys when you were, first read it, first started playing around with it? Do you think you're actively going to be seeking out these weapons for the origin trait? Is it just kind of a nice to have thing that might activate in the back pocket? Where does this fall kind of in your rankings of good origin traits?
Court, you go ahead, man.
I want to see what the numbers are for handling and reload speed, and then obviously charge rate is still an important stat for a sword. But I think it does require a little bit of setup, as you mentioned, but there is like a large kind of net to cast here. If you get a revive, or if you provide a healing or empowering or a subclass buff, that applies to many things. So it's too much to list here. But yeah, get that 10 stacks of noble deeds, and then you just get 1 removed per kill, at least in PvE. Yeah, I'm maybe not necessarily going out my way to get these weapons purely because of this origin trait, but it is definitely nice to have. And I think we do have some weapons here that would kind of greatly benefit for handling and reload speed. I will say, like, as an initial impression, I was wondering where I was getting noble deeps from, because I never actually read the origin trait text description. I kind of just skimmed past it. I was like, oh right, it's giving me handling, reload speed, but I was like, where am I getting this from? I couldn't get it to go away because it obviously kept getting replenished, because I was either on like a solar radiant build, which would be, it's a subclass buff, apply that to your teammates, and you just keep replenishing these stacks. So yeah, like it's very interesting. And if this is like a kind of foundational for future origin traits or weapons that are more kind of focused on support roles. We know Chris Proctor and Vivian, they spoke about on our podcast that they're open to having more of these kind of supportive perks or weapons. So yeah, I'm looking forward to how this can be expanded in the future. Saint?
Yeah, this fits really well into my Void play style, right? And I play a lot of Void Titan, and I'm either playing Void Titan, recently, and generating a lot of like overshields and healing via controlled demo. I'm on Solar Titan. I'm applying Radiance. Well, actually, I've been moving away from that because of just the way that fire sprites and all that stuff go. But that's the conversation for another time. The point is, there's a lot of builds that I use that this fits right into really nicely, and I think, to Court's point, it feels good to have some kind of like support traits more built into these weapons outright. And it's so easy to use with a lot of these weapons that having the high uptime on the reload is nice, and it can help you just have a higher usage for some of the perks that we'll be talking about as we jump in. So let's jump in, man. We're talking first up, we get some primaries, right?
We do have some primaries here. It should be noted, of course, this was already told to us ahead of time before Lightfall dropped, but all of these weapons are craftable. They each require 5 red border or 5 deep sight resonances. to acquire in the crafting system here. That's going to be the case for all the seasonal weapons going forward, as far as we know from Bungie. So just want to reiterate that. But yes, the first one we're talking about here is Perpetualis. This is the Strand adaptive frame auto rifle. That is a 600 RPM. Adaptive frames do not have a specific frame bonus other than their stats are, quote, well-rounded. So we see that here. 600s are auto rifles are pretty popular weapons, and they do have some pretty excellent pickings, although some of those are from the past and have been quite long-standing. So I'm thinking of Gnawing Hunger in the energy slot as a stat monster there. You've got Duty Bound and Scathlock, which have been holding down the kinetic slot quite well here. So those are the three that I'm kind of comparing the stats of Perpetualis to here. When we look at the stats here, it's actually a pretty narrow band, even though Perpetualis doesn't hold up quite too well here. You're looking at 43 range, that is kind of middle of the road. 48 is the highest of the four that we're comparing here. Stability of 35, that's low. 43 is the highest there. Handling of 62, that is low, but the highest is 63. So again, small band here. Reload speed of 58 is the highest of the ones that I've compared here. So it does hold its own statistically. And again, this is our only darkness energy adaptive auto rifle. We do not have a stasis adaptive auto, so quite unique in that regard here. The one thing though that is kind of looming in the background, the elephant in the room, is that we do have another Strand auto rifle this season in Rufus Fury. That is the Root of Nightmares, a raid rapid fire auto rifle, 720 RPM. We will be covering that in a later episode when we do our raid breakdown here. I'll give you a bit of a spoiler alert here. Rufus is quite attractive in the columns 3 and 4 perks for PvE. There is a lot of strong options. It's a raid weapon. Raid loot pools tend to be pretty spicy here. That is definitely the case. So I think I speak for Court and Saint here when I say that if you do raid, if you do Root of Nightmares, go for Rufus as your Strand auto rifle of choice. If you don't, Perpetualis does have some quite spicy options. There's even one perk here that Rufus does not get, which might be of interest to you. So just want to keep that in the back of your mind here if you're thinking about Strand auto rifles. There is a very competitive, very attractive option in the raid Root of Nightmares as well. When we get into our barrels here, again, it's an adaptive frame, 600s. They've got some pretty okay stats here. Handling and reload speed, I'll just start on here. When we've been talking about Noble Deeds giving a boost to that, those are the two highest stats that we have of the main four here. You got 62 handling, 58 reload speed. Noble Deeds is going to be nice, but again, for me personally, playing on mouse and keyboard, I find those two stats to be pretty excellent. I don't need to address those. I don't see those as problems. It's more the range and stability that I would look at. Recoil direction of 53 could be something that you want to look at. Do I want to spec an arrowhead break? Well, again, for me, the handling at 62 is quite high. I don't need additional help to the handling, but that 30 recoil direction would take me up to 83. That should make it quite vertical in its spray pattern here. The choice is up to you. I don't feel like that's particularly necessary for me. But again, if recoil direction is something that you feel like needs to be addressed, absolutely spec into that. You do also have extended barrel. That's just going to give you a plus 10 to your recoil direction. That does also help out your range, gives you plus 10 there. And it also hurts your handling a little bit. But remember, Origin trait's going to kick in to Noble Deeds. You're going to get a boost to that handling. So you can make up for that deficit with the Origin trait if you remember to proc that consistently. In column 2, Tactical Mag is the one that's really jumping out to me there. That's given me a little bit of a boost to stability. We love extra bullets. That's going to be nice here. Primary weapons do suffer, unfortunately. In-game content, we are looking at a buff to primary weapons coming in the mid-season patch here. But again, extra bullets is just kind of going to be something that you have to live with if you want to consistently kill enemies reliably. So that's why I go Tactical Mag. You could go Appended Mag if you really want. Again, I don't think Flared Magwell is necessary because the reload speed is going to get a bit of a boost from our Origin trait when that procs. So I'm okay with just leaning into something more along the lines of Tactical Mag, which while it does give me reload speed, it also gives me additional stability in bullets. So that's my thinking at least here. Moving into columns 3 and 4, for me, this is kind of where things get interesting. A lot of perks here that I think more of as PvP perks: Hipfire Grip, Zen Moment, Perfect Flow, Killing Wind. Elemental Capacitor showing up in column 3 is kind of a big one here. That's very rare. I think the last time that happened was on our Stasis fusion rifle from Trials, the adaptive, which is the name escapes me there, but that was the last time we had Elicap in Column 3. I don't know quite what to make of that. I mean, you definitely can get a huge boost to stability if you're running a Void subclass with your Strand auto rifle, but if you're on a Strand subclass and you're running this, you're just getting plus 20 airborne effectiveness. Not a stat that I really think of as valuable in PvE. I don't spend a ton of time in the air to the point where I need to really be thinking about my airborne effectiveness. I'm perfectly fine being on the ground here. So I'm not seeing a huge need for elemental capacitor. Again, the handling is quite high, so I don't really need to think about that if I'm on an arc subclass. Same thing for solar. Reload speed's already high. I get help with that from the origin trait. Not a lot of value to me. So ultimately, I'm not really feeling elemental capacitor. Column 3, though, we do have Keep Away and Envious Assassin. Keep Away seems to be the more favorable option here. You're looking at about 25 meters when you're aiming down sights before you get damage fall off. Keep Away will proc when no enemies are within 15 meters of you. So that gives you about a 10 meter window to really engage with this before you start experiencing damage fall off, which is nice. That's giving you extra range. It's also juicing up your reload speed, which again, we don't really need, but that's kind of something that you just kind of have to live with. Then we have Envious Assassin, which I'll be honest, for a weapon that already comes with 41 bullets, even though primary weapons are quite weak, I'm not sure how I feel about Envious on a large mag primary weapon. For me, that excels on special weapons that have smaller magazines or heavy weapons that have smaller magazines. To my knowledge, we don't have a rocket launcher with Envious Assassin, but that's kind of the weapon I think of as like, oh, that would be a great Envious Assassin weapon. An auto rifle, though, I'm not really sold on that too much. So for me, I'm just going to lean more towards Keep Away. What do you guys think about Column 3 perks here? I mean, what would you, if you are going to craft this, what would you really want to put on there for Column 3? What's standing out to you, Saint?
I see Killing Wind is interesting because Killing Wind gives such a big stat bonus. It's like 50 mobility, 40 handling, and 20 range, which are all really nice. But it does require a kill, whereas, the 10 range and 30 reload that I'm getting from Keep Away just cause, the only requirement is that I'm more than 15 meters away. And usually the handicap on that is the weapon's range before it's going to hit damage fall off. But if you're using like extended barrel and tac mag, I'm going to have like a good, almost 15 meters, I guess 13 meters before I would hit drop off on my actual damage while Keep Away is still active. So I think that's really nice. I know that Zen Moment got a huge buff because of the way that it's granting like flinch resistance now as well as stability, which is really nice. But I just don't see that as strong enough of an offering to take over Keep Away, especially, like I was just saying that your range allows you to activate that pretty easily without hitting damage drop off. Court, I don't know, any thoughts on our final traits here?
Not really, no. I mean, I would pretty much the same ballpark as you, impetus about Envious Assassin, where it's like, I wouldn't describe it as a trap perk, but it's there, but if you want to go down that route of having this pseudo machine gun, then you might as well find Envious Assassin on a machine gun, which, I will say personally, like, this AR just doesn't feel like a personal preference. It just doesn't feel right. And I've tried a few combos. Like this is the first weapon I managed to get crafted pretty early on, and it just doesn't feel right. And because it's weird because it shares the same archetype as Knowing Hunger, which is our most recent Void AR, and something about this one just doesn't feel right. And I've tried these combinations. I've tried to kind of mix and match, and it just isn't for me. Which is why, I'll be joining you in chasing that Rufus. I don't have 4 or 5 red boxes of Rufus yet. I think I've only got 1, but I will be joining you there.
Well, it doesn't have volatile flow. See, there's your problem right there.
That is true. That is true. Things do pick up in Column 4, though. We do actually get quite a few good perks here. Demo right at the top there. That's always a great perk. It would have been really fantastic if it shows up in Column 3, but I'll take it in Column 4. That's going to be really nice for getting that grenade back. However, whichever grenade you choose to be on, right? If we assume you're on Strand here, any of those three options, but especially the grapple, since we've talked a lot about that for the grapple melee combo, Demo is going to be a fantastic option for getting that chain going. Do have Golden Tricorn, Target Lock, and Hatchling. This is going to be interesting here. So Rufus does have Hatchling. It also gets Demolitionist in column 3. So that is a really, really tight synergy. And that's the main draw for me if we're going for Rufus, is I get to really tie into that. Having to trade for Demo or Hatchling on Perpetualis is a big blow in my eye. But Golden Tricorn is the unique perk here. Rufus does not roll Golden Tricorn at all, and as people have pointed out to me over the past week, Golden Tricorn can be procced with some ease on Strand here. So if you are looking for a heavy-hitting auto rifle that is of the Strand persuasion, I think Golden Tricorn and Keep Away would be a pretty solid combination here. It'll be interesting because if you're using your grapple melee, you're probably not going to proc Keep Away by the time you get to ×2 Golden Tricorn unless you back up or you do kill the enemy with the grapple melee. But if you wanted to, maybe use a Tangle, destroy that as your way to get to ×2 Golden Tricorn while also keeping Keep Away up, that's definitely an option there. So again, I think if you have the option to go for Rufus, that's probably going to be the one that I go for the Hatchling perk. If not, that's definitely an option there. If you still want to have Perpetualis and you also have Rufus, a roll of Rufus with Hatchling, then the Golden Tricorn perk is really the unique option in column 4 here. That's the one that I'm really kind of focusing in on as my damage perk of choice, since that's unique to Perpetualis. You guys have anything else further to add on here? Anything else that's sticking out in column 4?
Yeah, I think that the idea that your Tangle explosion could trigger Tricorn was, I was just not thinking about that. And like you were saying at the beginning of the episode, when I was reading these tweets, I was like, okay, there's some synergy there, especially with the way the artifacts are going right now. And my Titan, if I destroy one, I'm getting Woven Mail again, which is my whole objective. And if I have Woven Mail, I'm generating more Tangles, which could allow me to trigger Golden Tricorn more easily. It's okay, something's happening there. All right.
I think.
Go ahead, Court. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Golden Tricorn paired with the grapple melee will be pretty interesting. But again, as I already mentioned, it just this AR just doesn't feel right. Those weapons that you get to play with, and everyone keeps telling you, yeah, it's actually not too bad. And for me, it just doesn't feel right. I've tried to make it work, and even with that kind of desire, the lust that you could get from Golden Tricorn with grapple melee to get that 50% damage buff, still not quite there for me. I'm afraid.
Totally fair. So again, the build here that I'm kind of looking at, I'm speccing more into range on my barrels, Hammer Forge, extended barrel. I think tactical mag is the safest, the best all around magazine option, and then Keep Away, and then either Hatchling if you're not going for Rufus, or Golden Tricorn if that's the option that you want to go for more damage. Those are the roles that I think Perpetualis does best here. You guys got anything else? Any other synergies?
I think that's about it.
All right, let's move on to our second primary.
Yeah.
Yes, so we have Raconteur, which is the Stasis Precision Frame Bow. So at base, that's a 684 draw time. This is a compound bow, so longer draw time for optimized damage. So this is our first Stasis Precision Frame Bow. We already have our Lunalata, which is our Stasis Lightweight Bow. But this one does join quite a selection that are still kind of active, that you can still maybe not necessarily drop right now, but there is a kind of crowded market here. Just to list a few, we've got Strident Whistle, which is their most recent, which is from Season of the Haunted. The season before that, we had Under Your Skin. We had Biting Winds from the European set, and we obviously have Accrued Redemption, which is Garden of Salvation's bow. So it's, it joins quite a crowded market here. In terms of the stats here, it's got the lowest accuracy in terms of, we've got 65, whereas 74 is the largest here. It's the lowest out of the 5 that I'm ranking here. Stability, though, highest at 48. Everything else is kind of -7 or -5. The closest competitor here would be Under Your Skin. Handling is also high, 56. Again, Under Your Skin and Crew Redemption are just -1, just slightly below, and reload speed is the same across all 5 here. So yeah, compared to a Crew Redemption Under Your Skin, Raconteur is very competitive. There is obviously the other stasis bow if you want to go down the lightweight route. It is Lunalata, but it does lack Archer's Tempo, and obviously, well, it's not necessarily directly acquirable at this time. That compared to Raconteur, where you can just go and craft it after you get those red boxes. For highlighted kind of, well, barrels and mags, but for the bow here, it's your sort of arrow and your bowstring and your arrow here. So for bowstring, probably elastic string. Just kind of give it that little edge compared to the rest. And for your arrow, it's combat arrow shaft for the +10 reload and the +10 handling. For our perks here, third column, again, this is kind of a lot of kind of PvP here. We do have Archer's Tempo. That is obviously our big fan favorite for both PvP and PvE. I think more so for our type of sandbox, just so you can keep getting those arrows down range. I do see stats roll here, but also shoot to loot. If you want to go down the route of shoot to loot, I know that is quite a niche build. It's not necessarily for me. I'm not really interested in shoot to loot. I acknowledge it has that kind of synergy and that potential, but for me it's not so much. For column 4, we obviously have our really great standard issue perk here. It's Explosive Heads. That's a really great one, just to kind of split the damage into impact and explosive and just kind of get a shared damage here. We also have Headstone. Stasis synergy is still present if you want to go down that route of spawning those Headstone crystals and then linking that into your stasis fragments, get your grenade back faster, etc., etc. Other perks here, though, I mean, Rampage makes another return here. Rampage, a very classic old perk. Successful warm-up and, gut shot straight. I mean, not really for us. Successful warm-up's more of a PvP role here. And for PvE, when it comes to successful warm-ups, probably better for other types of weapons. So you don't really have a lot of choice here. You guys got any comments with the column 3 and 4 perks?
Yeah, Rampage got its buff with the duration, right? Rampage spec got rolled into it, but
that's true. Yep.
Explosive Head, I feel like it just still can't compete with Explosive Head, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are pretty straightforward when you do a breakdown. You look for Archer's Tempo in column 3, okay, great. And then it's kind of, damage perks. We got Explosive Head, awesome, here we go. This one's, for me, I'm really excited. I put Headstone on my crafted one, Archer's Tempo Headstone. Really been loving that. We do have that exotic bow from this season for Glass Curve that's basically also Archer's Tempo Headstone, but on exotic steroids. So I find that this is a quite suitable legendary counterpart to that if I don't want to spend my exotic slot on for Glass. So yeah, I mean, Explosive Head is just so great. We've got Overload Bow in for this season. That's so strong. But Headstone now also has the capacity for a champion counter, right? Get that crystal, shatter it. Any unstoppables nearby, they're going to be stunned by that. That's so potent. A little bit harder to set up, of course, not quite as passive as Explosive Head and Overload Bow, but it's there in your back pocket, and Headstone's just a great perk in general.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we'll be recommending here. In terms of Masterworks, really up to you. If you want to go down, handling route, that's up to you. But I think draw time's going to be the sort of go-to when it comes to this type of bow, just to kind of really capitalize on, that kind of Legolas movement here. In terms of weapon mods, again, it's going to be a spec mod. Minor spec if you kind of want to really guarantee on those almost one-shots, maybe not so much in kind of higher up content, but for middling kind of low-end content, yeah, guarantee that headshot to get that headstone proc. if you want to go down the route of major spec for champions, it's available for you. But again, it's entirely up to you. But yeah, Archer's Tempo and Headstone is going to be kind of our recommendation here. Pretty, as we already mentioned, it's a competitive bow here. It does join a crowded market. If you've got a strident whistle, that's obviously the whole shtick with incandescent. That's maybe a little bit more of a appetizing elemental compared to Headstone. Headstone's more of a static, spawns in. I wouldn't say it doesn't have necessarily zero synergy. I just think it's got less synergy compared to incandescent, and how you can really spread that in scorch across a large area. But saying that, Strident Whistle isn't accessible now. That's the last year bow. Your next best option would be Under Your Skin. It's still a really great void bow. It's still in my arsenal when I want to get a bow out. And then, you've got Biting Winds and Accrued Redemption, which don't have access to origin traits at this time anyway. But interesting bow. I don't have it crafted yet, but I do want to play around with the whole Headstone kind of interaction. Stasis is still one of my kind of preferred builds, and for my hunter builds, I kind of tap into shattering those crystals to get my grenade energy back. So it may find a place in my arsenal. All right, Saint, we have a fusion rifle next. What can you say about that one?
Yeah, the Royal Executioner is a solar adaptive frame fusion rifle, base 660 charge time, and this thing does have some unique combinations to offer. First, looking at the base stats here, for our archetype here, we got Dreambreaker, we got Timeline's Vertex, and we also have Trinary System. That's come from the Moon. I believe the second one is a World Drop, and the third one is going to come from Gambit. Its base stats are not great. It turns out that Trinary System has a really strong base stat package, which is interesting for not all our playlist weapons always fit that description, but in this case, we are starting off with 31 range, which is third, compared to Trinary at 39 being the best. 35 stability, which is the lowest out of the group, with Trinary again the highest at 43. 30 handling is lower, with Trinary and Timeline tied for 35 at the highest there. 32 reload, again, it's going to be third in class, with the Timeline beating it out at 40 this time. We got 58 recoil direction, which is actually pretty good. That's going to be second highest at base to Timeline at 60. So honestly, that's right at the top there with its competitors. Overall, it has a fine stat package. It's just losing out to Trinary, which kind of stands out in its group. And we also have some other really strong contenders. When we look outside of Solar here, it is still going to kind of fall in a bottom quarter-ish, maybe bottom third of overall stat packages. But what it lacks there, it makes up for in some of its trait combos. When I'm looking at barrel and mag before we get into our main traits, I'm probably thinking Arrowhead Break is going to give me 30 recoil direction, which is going to be really nice for my overall grouping. I know that, cranking that up from 58 to 88 is going to feel really nice. It's also going to take my handling up from 30 to 40, which 30 is quite low, honestly, even though that a majority of these weapons in this category do have pretty low handling. I could also definitely see an argument, if you want to go for a little bit more range, but adding on 10 points of range here is only going to give you about half a meter of effective range. So I'm not sure that's worth it over something like Arrowhead Break. And I just don't think that's quite enough range to justify it versus some of the other options that we have to kind of lean into here. The same thing goes for our magazine. You could go Projection Fuse, which would add your 10 to range. Again, that's about half a meter. You get an entire 1 meter if you go Hammer Forged and Projection Fuse. You also have Particle Repeater for extra stability to help with that burst, but I think my choice has got to be Accelerated Coils. That is going to give me just a slight reduction in damage, about 2% reduction in damage, And then it's going to give me a nice bump to my charge time, being about negative 40 seconds there whenever I add on my accelerated coils, which is really nice. And then something I'll jump ahead a little bit here and say is that you can combo that with a charge time masterwork. So if you really want to get that charge time down and you think that 660 is still high if you've been using a bunch of rapid fire fusions, you can combo those together, which is it's going to feel pretty good. I think that's a pretty strong combo. I always like a really high charge time, or a really low charge time, I should say, because I think it's a negligible damage difference. You're losing maybe like 4% in damage output here for your negative 10 impact, and you're gaining quite a significant bump to your overall charge time. I think you want to get right underneath 1600 maybe if you equip both of those together with the accelerated coils and the charge time masterwork. So, that's where I'm going for my kind of general setup here, and things start to get real interesting when we look at columns 3 and 4. In column 3, we've got Grave Robber, Threat Detector, Lead from Gold, and Envious Assassin, which, kind of going back to our former discussion, this is going to be pretty valuable on a weapon like this. And when we move towards column 4, you've got Swashbuckler, Reservoir Burst, and Incandescent. And that is opening up some pretty strong pairings there. Court, what do you think out of your traits here? I definitely think that there's a combo that's jumping out at us off the bat.
Well, you guys know I'm all about sandbox perks like Incandescent. So that is jumping out. This is obviously our first Incandescent fusion rifle. So yeah, I haven't spent a ton of time with Royal Executioner. Again, it's like the Raconteur. It's one of the lowest ones I haven't managed to craft yet, but that does pique my interest. And yeah, I think Lead from Gold, Incandescent will be a nice synergy. Envious Assassin as well. I know we were kind of poo-pooing it on with kind of a primary weapon, but for a special, yeah, Envious, having that kind of put in the back pocket, do a bunch of kills, bring out your fusion rifle, and you've got X amount of rounds. We're not entirely sure how much it would be for this one, unless you guys have tested this out recently. But yeah, those two column 3 perks and Incandescent definitely would be pretty interesting in my arsenal. I think Impetus. I think you've mentioned Reservoir Burst for this particular fusion rifle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Envious Assassin Reservoir Burst combo for multiple Reservoir Burst shots, if you get to the overflow portion of Envious Assassin, is so tempting. But I'm just trying to figure out, Reservoir Burst is an add clear perk, and Envious Assassin is a perk that asks that your other weapons be add clear, right, to really take advantage of that overflow effect. So I'm really torn here because outside of Envious Assassin, the other perks that we've mentioned would help me for the one Reservoir Burst shot, which is still fine. It's a solid perk here. Lead from Gold is an excellent in-game perk. Grave Robber, I'm probably not going to use this for melee reloads necessarily, but yeah, I'm torn because I love Lead from Gold, but I think that would probably pair better with Incandescent than it would Reservoir Burst. Envious Assassin is it's right on the line for fusion rifles for me of like, well, okay, do I want a fusion rifle with Envious Assassin, or does it still have too many in the mag for me to really justify getting to that overflow effect? So, yeah, I'm right. I think my crafted level is 6 on Royal Executioner, so I'm right before unlocking Reservoir Burst and Incandescent, and I'm a little torn here as to what I'm going to go for.
Yeah, I think I like Lead from Gold and Incandescent together because it allows me to like really lean into that eye clear role without worrying about my ammo economy as much. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to craft. I have one roll with Reservoir Burst, but I don't have Envious Assassin on it. And I definitely see what you're saying about, it's like, am I using my SMG to clear out some ads, and I'm switching to a weapon to clear out some more ads? And the 25% increased damage part of Reservoir Burst is attractive. I'm hoping to try a few more random rolls. My pattern rolls hopefully have some different options on them, so I can get some more feedback from usage before I go for crafting. But it is definitely interesting to see Envious Assassin and Reservoir Burst combo show up for the first time in a weapon like this, and it has an interesting offering. Whether that can outweigh the Incandescent on a fusion, I don't know.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Alrighty, I'm going to talk about our second special weapon here. This is a very surprising one. This is an ARC lightweight special ammo grenade launcher here, the Prodigal Return. These are commonly referred to as the breech loading grenade launchers. That's what the frame entails. It does allow for a remote detonation here. ARC lightweight special ammo grenade launchers, probably the most competitive field that we have. You probably are thinking of the Salvager Salvo. That is our other ARC lightweight special ammo grenade launcher. Very, very popular crowd control option. Chain reaction is the only grenade launcher to roll chain reaction, which makes it fantastic for crowd control, ad clear. Really, really solid here. That's what I'm going to be comparing Prodigal Return to. It's statistically, it's not doing too well here. So it does have 73 velocity. That is high, quite high here. Reload speed of 62. That's the next highest one. It's second highest. 70 is our highest here, and then it gets worse for the perks in between. Stability of 23. Those are typically low here. Highest is 28. Handling of 63 is the lowest. 70 is the highest here. So if you're looking for a stat monster, this one ain't it, but it does have some pretty solid perks, which is kind of impressive considering what it's going up against here. 4 barrels and magazine here. For me, on a breech-loaded grenade launcher, the two stats that I'm working on the most are velocity and handling. I want to get those up as much as possible. Blast radius can be affected massively by what type of grenade that you're going for. If you are going for disorienting grenades, which is the new name for blinding grenades, then that comes with a minus 100 blast radius. So again, that's why I don't really worry too much about the blast radius stat if I'm leaning towards that perk. But it does have a base of 100, so another reason why you don't need to worry about it too much here. So again, I've said it's velocity and handling. Those are the two that I'm looking for here. And along those lines, I'm going to recommend Quick Launch and then Smart Drift Control are the two that kind of really stand out for me here. Quick Launch giving that plus 10 velocity, plus 15 handling. Just very simple, brings velocity up to 83, handling up to 78. Smart Drift Control gives us a lot more buffs across a lot more stats here. That also touches on stability and recoil direction. Again, not really two perks that I care too much about. You do have one in the magazine. I do know that. I'm right about this one, I promise. So I'm not too concerned about recoil direction when there's only one shot. And again, stability, same reasoning. There's only one in the mag. It's not affecting me too much how much kick this weapon has. So Quick Launch is my priority here, but I think Smart Drift Control can be quite nice as well. Getting into the second column, this is where you need to make your decision. We have disorienting grenades and we have spike grenades. Disorienting is great for utility, for being a bit more of a support weapon. Spike grenades are what we use for damage here. I'll be honest, with Salvager Salvos still around, really hard to see why I would run spike grenades unless I'm going for a very specific perk combo in column 4. But again, I think chain reaction is still just too strong of a perk to have on a special weapon for me to justify some of the interesting stuff that we do have. When I crafted this, I did end up going for the disorienting grenades. That's a unique perk. We haven't yet had an ARC breech loaded grenade launcher in the special slot with that, so that was kind of my highlight here. I went for a disorienting utility roll here. Moving on to column 3 and 4. Again, we do have some really solid options here. There's a lot of different ways to take this. For me, it's the bottom 4 perks here on column 3 that really stand out. You got Field Prep, Threat Detector, Lead from Gold, and Envious Assassin. This is a perfect weapon for Envious Assassin. You do have one in the magazine. The overflow here is going to be great. I do believe you can get this all the way up to 3 in the mag if you do get to the maximum overflow, but you can also quite easily get to 2 in the magazine, which again, regardless of what grenade you have in your magazine slot, is going to be quite potent for these weapons as they do hit really hard. So that's kind of the one that really stands out to me, but you still got some excellent options here. Field Prep, of course, is going to be helpful for getting that reload speed up all the way to 100 if you remember to crouch when you reload. Threat Detector, bit of a risky one here, but there's another perk in column 4, Danger Zone, which can be a bit helpful here. Danger Zone has been modified recently to include a 40% reduced self-damage. So even if you do have some enemies nearby you, when you proc Threat Detector for a quicker reload, and you do happen to hit yourself when you're firing at those close enemies, if they have Danger Zone on, you're going to be taking a little bit of reduced self-damage there. Maybe you won't kill yourself outright. So, that kind of forgiveness can be helpful. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention. Lead from Gold, of course, we just talked about. Our Royal Executioner, great in-game perk, great for ammo, efficiency, ammo economy on your special weapons as well. Column 4, though, that's where things really get interesting. But before we get into that, Court and Saint, anything else you're looking at here in column 3 that really stands out? I take it you're not real thrilled about Thresh in column 3?
I mean, it's got Thresh, it's got Turnabout, I mean, what more could you ask for? I mean, honestly, at first when I think Blinding Grenade, I immediately think Autoloading Holster, but Envious Assassin is it's an acceptable substitute for Autoloading Holster. And then Threat Detector too is always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add here. Yeah, Field Prep, rather interesting seeing that. Is there other grenade launchers that have had that breach loading that have had that in the third column? It just doesn't look right when I look at the other perks.
Yeah,
when I'm comparing the perks.
Field Prep, no, it doesn't.
I want to say Explosive Personality had Field Prep.
Yeah, probably.
But that was actually that's a wave frame. That's a wave frame.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking like for just a breach loading grenade launcher for like classic GL. Just think it just looks weird to see Field Prep in there.
The other solar one might. Yeah. I'll look that up, but yeah, I can't remember. It's a very interesting perk to show up on this one for sure. Alrighty.
We got some juicers waiting for us in column 4 here.
We do have some juicers, yes. So I did mention Danger Zone already. That is not going to affect disorienting grenades as far as I'm aware, because it does disorienting does apply that minus 100 blast radius. I used to think it did, but I don't believe it does anymore. That also does, of course, require you to be within 15 meters of 3 enemies to even proc that, which can be quite risky. So again, that's very much a buyer beware perk. It's potent on spike grenades if you really want to, but I'm not feeling it too much here. Disruption Break, this one to me is the most natural pairing with disorienting grenades. I think that's going to be quite strong here. Kinetic weapons do have a surge if you have another weapon that is matching an elemental surge in your inventory here. So that's always something nice to keep in the back pocket. If you can match up those surges and get kinetic weapons to take advantage of the surge, Disruption Break becomes a very powerful weapon here, a very powerful perk on weapons. So that's what I've put on my crafted roll is Envious Assassin. Disruption Break with disorienting grenades is a really powerful utility tool here. Rampage, again, got a buff. Not really feeling it too much, especially again when Salvager Salvo has chain reaction, just not flashy enough. I feel the same way with Adrenaline Junkie and Demolitionist. Salvagers does come with Demolitionist as well, so that's another reason why I don't really concern myself with this. Our final perk, though, this is the one that probably a lot of people will think of and wonder if this is the replacement for Salvagers. We do finally have Volt Shot on a breach-loaded grenade launcher. Now, Volt Shot does require a reload, which is why I think they probably stuck Field Prep on there. It's a manual reload, so, auto-loading holster wouldn't have done anything for Volt Shot, but reloading the weapon after defeating the target overcharges the weapon for the jolt on the next hit. That can be pretty powerful here. I still will lean towards chain reaction because that doesn't require me to reload, but I can certainly see the Arc 3.0 synergy and just the funness of the fun factor of Volt Shot for folks that want to jolt enemies with their breech loaded grenade launcher. Yeah, I'm just not too sold on that, but I do think Threat Detector or Field Prep would probably be the best option to pair with that. What do you guys feel like? Are you going for a Volt Shot roll here? Do you want to kind of have a replacement or an updated version of Salvager Salvo, or are you leaning towards a completely different roll altogether?
I'm just going for Volt Shot because it's unique. I'm a sucker for unique rolls, right? And like I think you just mentioned, Threat Detector would probably be my pairing. Because if I put on like a Reload Masterwork, it's put me at like 77. If I put on a Reload Masterwork, that's putting you at 72, and then you proc Threat Detector, even just one-time Threat Detector that's putting you up to 77. You max out Threat Detector, it's like 100 reload speed. I don't think it's I mean, salvo is still like dominant, right? But it's unique, it's interesting, and I'll go after it for that reason.
Yeah, I think I'm probably just going to go for the Disorienting Grades and Envious Assassin and Disruption Break, to be honest. I can't really picture Volt Shot, really. Sure, like for you guys covered last week with the fusion rifle that applies Volt Shot, that's got some nice synergy. You I think you're more grounded in that way. You don't have the sort of have to RNG shot your grenade launcher so to make sure it really lands on a target to apply jolts. But yeah, I might need to play around with that, especially with it having field preps. You've got a little bit more of a kind of faster reload when you are crouching. But I think Envious Assassin, Disorienting Grenades, and Disruption Breaks got a little bit more of an appeal because you've got potentially 3 grenades waiting behind the scenes to do kind of an en masse blinding, well, not blinding, but disorienting for like a specific encounter or a room, where I think the synergy with Volt Shot isn't quite there compared to, say, Chain Reaction on a grenade launcher.
Yeah, I definitely agree that Fusion, the iterative loop, is probably the better one of our new kind of fun Volt Shot weapons. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Court.
Worth pointing out, of course, Origin Trait does give a boost to your reload speed. So even though, again, if you're going to be going down the route where you need to be manually reloading, you forget to take advantage of field prep. If you got stacks of Noble Deeds, you are getting a stat bump here. We're still working out the exact numbers, of course, but at base you're looking at 62 reload speed. So you're going to be going quite quick too. It doesn't take a lot of work to get to a faster reload here. So Volt Shot is definitely a feasible option for sure, but you just need to be ready to be reloading a lot to take advantage of it. But yeah, Prodigal Return. I never thought we'd get a blinding. Sorry, goodness, we're gonna be correcting ourselves a lot here with this name change. With a Disorienting Arc Special Grenade Launcher, I've been waiting to see if that would ever come out since Salvagers has been so dominant, and they finally gave us one in Prodigal Return. So very excited about that. All right, we got 2 more weapons left. Our heavy weapons here. Court, take us away.
Yeah, speaking of a sort of nice synergy with the Origin perk, Origin trait here with Regnant, which is our Void Adaptive Frame Heavy Ammo Grenade Launcher. So that's your drum magazine. The reason why I'm sort of highlighting the Origin trait here as well, if you apply an overshield, so our Titan friends here, if you apply an overshield to your teammates, you get that nice reload and handling speed, which will definitely come into play when I talk about the perks here. But in terms of the stats, we're going to be comparing it with, well, its most recent iteration was Wendigo. So this is, in essence, a Void Wendigo. But we do also have Cry Mutiny, which is the Solar from Season to Plunder, and of course Typhon, which is the Witch Queen release, which is the Stasis heavy GL. So Regnant, pretty poor on its stats. It's not a stat monster. It's got the lowest for velocity, which is 28. 35 is the highest. Stability is 37. The highest is 42. Handling is 40. Not too far behind from 42 for the others. And reload speed is 39, which is pretty low considering that 46 is the highest. So again, yeah, it's not a stat monster, but it has some really good perks here. In terms of barrels and magazines here for quick launch, just to really kind of play it into getting that plus 15 handling, but also plus 10 velocity. You can go down that route, or you can go smart drift control, which is, you get your really great synergy here with plus 10 stability, plus 5 velocity, plus 15 recoil, and plus 10 handling. So a nice sort of combination of stat buffs there. For magazine, really, when it comes to a heavy GL, going to go for spike grenades just to kind of really capitalize on getting the increase the damage with the impact. For our main perks, now, although I did mention about the origin trait here, so part of it is pretty much wasted when we pair auto-loading holster. So you won't get, you're not going to bother with reloading, but you will get the handling. So handling's really important when you are doing that sort of hot swap auto-loading holster build here. Other perks that are also here, Envious Assassin, if you want to go down that route. We've talked about it quite a lot. All these weapons have it. Other than that, I mean, Repulsor Brace is there. If you want to pair it with the Column 4 perk of Destabilizing Rounds, it's a nice Void 3.0 synergy. We have in Column 4, we've got Unrelenting. Again, if you want to go down that kind of add clear route, but I think we're all kind of be pointing towards Explosive Light. That's why we're kind of talking about this is Wendigo, but Void. So any other perks that you guys are noticing here? We haven't talked about Sofa. Sofa does exist on this heavy gel, but I know you guys probably won't be bothering to recommend this just with the setup, which is much better for other weapons, but not for heavy GLs.
Yeah, I want to put Sofa on a weapon I can spray, right? I want an SMG, I want an auto rifle is what I feel like is going to hit peak benefit from that. So it's nice. I mean, I get that you could hit one group of ads and proc it up real quick, but you're just not always going to be in that scenario. And I think that would be my biggest knock against that combo.
Sure, you don't want to pair it with the Origin trait? Get, Stats for All does give you that plus 10 stability, 35 handling, plus 10 range. No?
It's nice. Sure, yeah. But, I mean, auto-loading holster is just too good, man.
We're stalling for time here, yeah. It's auto-loading holster is definitely the way here, but definitely a kind of optional synergy here with Repulsor Brace and destabilizing rounds, just for that Void 3.0 synergy.
Yeah, I will say on that combo, that Void 3.0 synergy, there's only one other weapon in the game that can get that combo at the moment. That's going to be the shotgun from Root of Nightmares, Nessa's Oblation. So, it's a strong combination. Whether or not you feel like that's justified on a heavy weapon is probably going to be up to you. I think Nessus is probably a lot more appetizing as a special weapon for that. But, I mean, destabilizing rounds is a very effective crowd control perk here, and heavy grenade launchers do have that option to go kind of boss damage or crowd control. That's kind of where they're sitting at after their buff. So you do have options, but I will first and foremost go for that auto-loading Explosive Light. But it's nice to see some cool synergy also cropping up there if you want to really double down on overshields.
I think what really strikes me about Explosive Light is that I'm pretty sure the enhanced version of this perk will allow you to go to 7 stacks, right?
Yep.
So,
yeah, that is correct.
I mean, you could say that it's even better than Wendigo in that aspect.
Yep. So, everyone was chasing Wendigo last season, as we should have, and we did. But this is our first Explosive Light craftable. For grenade launcher, we've had rocket launchers with Explosive Light before, but for grenade launchers, this is, very interesting combination there. If you want to show off to your friends, like, you guys farm for a really great Explosive Light Wendigo, I just crafted my Regnant.
Couldn't be me, man. Couldn't be me.
That's
Team
a little
RNG versus Team Crafting. Nice grenade launcher here. I don't see a lot of commentary. I think people are obviously memeing the name because of various reasons that we won't go into detail here, but it's kind of took a bit of a low profile against the other weapons. At least that's my impression. But it's definitely, it's there, and it could be used for your sort of burst damage potential. And remember, pair that with handling if you're going for the auto-loading holster, just to kind of really maximize out your mass work for handlings plus 10, just to kind of. And obviously that gets increased as well when you reach the level 20 for craftable weapons, and obviously boss spec to capitalize on your damage. All right, we've got a final one here. Saint, we have a very interesting and another incandescent weapon.
Yeah, we have the Caretaker, and not the boss, okay? The weapon. This is a solar adaptive frame sword. and it has a couple direct competitors, and it has some kind of interesting standout stats whenever we look at the base stats. The base charge rate is going to be higher than normal, and are kind of it's way higher than normal, I should say. It's a 60 charge rate versus the standard of 20, which is a pretty big difference there. And then we also have a 62 impact stat versus the standard of 60. This is something we've seen on Bequest, right? I believe has 70 as its base impact versus the base 60. So it's not quite that high, but it is interesting to see just like a little bump here, a little creep there in the base impact, and a significant increase in its charge rate. So it's got a pretty compelling stat package off the bat for Solar Swords. There's another Solar Sword that has just entered the game this season called Throne Cleaver, but that is a Titan exclusive. So I'm going to be talking about that a ton in this episode, but that's another one I'm kind of keeping my eye on towards crafting. When we look at our blade and our guard versus kind of barrel and mag place here, it's got to be Jagged Edge, right, for that impact increase, and then it's got to be Swordmaster's Guard for the charge rate increase. Take it all the way up to 70, which is like really high compared to your base, especially if you're looking at like 30 or something, it would be pretty good. Now we're talking all the way up to 70 is going to be really nice. Swordmasters is also giving us nice bonuses to our, guard resistance, guard efficiency, guard endurance. Not as good as some of our other options. Enduring guard is got to be pretty good option as well. But I'm not really looking for the defensive capabilities on a sword, to be honest with you. I'm looking for the offensive capabilities. Not really a ton there, so I'll keep it brief on that. The stats are the charge rate and the impact are definitely the standout things to note here. And we do have some pretty good main trait offerings. When we look at column 3, we've got Flash Counter, Tireless Blade, Relentless Strikes, and then in column 4, we have One for All, Surrounded, and then Incandescent, which is I believe new for a sword. And then we also have Valiant Charge, which is another interesting perk. Valiant Charge states that when you are receiving damage while guarding it gain a temporary increase to your sword lunge distance. This is kind of like this is like a combat focused Eager Edge, but I'm not really sold on that because Eager Edge is a movement tool more than it is a combat tool. I mean, sure, it's nice to be able to close the gap really quick between a couple of enemies and reduce kind of your exposure there, but I'm not super sold on Valiant Charge as a sword trait whenever I do have Eager Edge options available that are so strong. But yeah, I mean, like Incandescent, right? This has got to be the go-to option here. But the part that I'm more curious about is which trait do you guys want to combo with your Incandescent?
That's an interesting one because my brain thinks that Scorch may kind of contribute to Relentless Strikes, but that I'm being very theoretical here. I don't know if it does. I'd be very interested to see if there is some sort of combination there, because the way how Incandescent can apply its effects can kind of show as if it's a weapon perk that's applying it, which is why I'm thinking Relentless Strikes might also proc off that. But again, I might just be really spitballing here, but probably would be Relentless Strikes. But in terms of Tireless Blade as well, sword ammo granted for every other powered sword kill, again, may have the same interaction with how Incandescent Scorch can apply to then make an ignition, etc., etc. So I think I would probably go for Tireless Blade.
Yeah, Relentless is, I think, probably most well known for being the trait that you use against boss targets when you're going to be whacking on them for a while, and then Tireless is kind of really shines when you're just mowing down minor tier enemies. Incandescent again lends itself more towards ad clear, right? You're not going to be proccing it against mini boss champion type until you kill them. So I am leaning towards Tireless Blade with Incandescent. Yeah, I think that's probably, if I wanted to really make use of Relentless Strikes, my gut would probably lean towards Surrounded, right? To get enhanced Surrounded, to get that massive damage buff if I'm going to be right next to an enemy for a period of time. But yeah, I mean, Incandescent's just so much fun. I have this one crafted with Incandescent, and it's awesome because we do have Overload Sword this season, so I'll run right up to that Overload champ in the seasonal playlist, whack on it a bunch, stun it, keep whacking on it. It explodes into fire. There's going to be Taken Scions nearby. They all start burning, and yeah, I just keep going to town. So it's definitely a fun interaction for sure.
I think the last thing I'll mention is Flash Counter is really interesting. Melee blocked immediately after guarding disorients and weakens the attacker. So that does also play, it's not as good in the ammo economy, but it does play pretty nicely to that role that you were just talking about, Impetus, where you just want to jump up in the mix and you just want to deal some damage real quick, right? It is a pretty decent option there. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it's a really fun weapon, and Incandescent on a sword, man, it's like great. It's like seeing chain reaction on Hero of Ages. Right, it definitely reminds me of like a similar vibe to that, and I absolutely love that weapon. Okay, that's about it for our seasonal weapon set. All in all, a couple unique combos, couple unique weapons. Nothing too crazy, but I think a decent set, and a heavy that surpassed Wendigo, which I don't know if any of us saw coming in the first week of the next season.
Yeah, no, I think, as a kind of seasonal list, it's a nice opening to the new year of Destiny. I don't think we should expect seasonal weapons to be like really high on the list of priority to get. They are pretty simple to craft. They are kind of, the red borders do seem to be dropping quite fast and pretty swiftly. From day to day and week to week. But yeah, I think if you're after a Strand AR, go for the raid. If you're not interested in doing the raid, or if it's maybe not something you're kind of going to be aiming for until kind of the long run for this year, then yeah, go for the AR. But yeah, Saint mentioned there with Regnant could be the Wendigo kind of killer here. Potentially, if you've got that explosive light times 7. Really great. Impetus, you got any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, there's definitely a few here that are nice additions. Really nice having a solid legendary stasis bow. I think the last Void heavy grenade launcher that I had was Memory Interdict from, goodness, almost just under 2 years ago, all the way back in Splicer. So nice having an updated updated version of that. Solar Swords, goodness, what did I have? I can't even remember, but now I've got Caretaker, so I'm quite satisfied. Always nice to have the option to craft these as well. So I think it's another perfectly good set of seasonal weaponry.
All right, well, another episode in the bag, lads. Thank you for listening this week. This is episode 55. We want to once again thank our listeners and our amazing patrons and sponsors. We, of course, want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidaktos, for keeping us sounding crisp every week. My name is Court. You can find me over on my Twitter at Court Projects. You can find me on Discord in the Massive Breakdowns Discord server as Court. And you can find my documentation and infographics over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website, along with other applications and spreadsheets to enhance your Destiny experience. Saint, where can we find you?
Yep, my name is Sink Beer. You can find me by that name on Twitter and the Massive Breakdowns Discord server and hanging out in game. Impetus, where can we find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name on Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and rest in peace, Lance Reddick.